Have you ever noticed that in almost every new adult friendship, the same question eventually surfaces? Sometimes it's direct, sometimes it hides behind anecdotes or self-deprecating humor, but it's always there. How do you make friends as an adult? It's a question that reveals far more than just curiosity. It exposes a quiet crisis in modern adult life. This isn't simply about logistics. It's about a deep collective uncertainty around belonging, connection, and the invisible architecture of adult social life. We ask it with a laugh, as though we're the only ones still figuring it out. But the irony is, everyone's asking the same thing. The question itself has become a rite of passage. It shows up subtly in conversations over coffee, during long walks with someone we're still getting to know, or when we find ourselves feeling unexpectedly lonely after a big move, a career change, or even a breakup. Not of the romantic kind, but of the social kind. What's so striking is that we rarely questioned this process when we were younger. Childhood, school, university, these institutions gave us an embedded framework for forming relationships. You didn't have to ask how to make friends when everyone around you was the same age, on the same schedule, and sharing the same cafeteria. Proximity and repetition did the heavy lifting. But adulthood strips away those structures. We disperse geographically, emotionally, ideologically. We start living parallel lives rather than overlapping ones. Time becomes segmented. Our energy is rationed. And still, this fundamental human need to be seen, known, and met doesn't go away. If anything, it grows more acute. So when we ask, how do you make friends? We're not just inquiring about tactics. We're asking, is there still a place for me in someone else's life? Am I worth the effort? Psychologically, this question taps into our need for what attachment theory calls safe others, those people who offer co-regulation, reciprocity, and the sense that we are held in someone else's mind. When we lack that, it destabilizes not just our social lives, but our self-concept. We start to believe the absence of connection says something about us, rather than something about the system we're operating in. And philosophically, this question exposes our relationship with effort and vulnerability. In a culture that prizes independence, asking for connection can feel like admitting defeat. But what if instead it's a form of courage, a gesture of mutual recognition, a signal to others that we're willing to participate in the fragile, ongoing project of being human, together? So yes, the question comes up in all new adult friendships, but perhaps we've misunderstood it. It's not a sign of deficiency. It's a signal of longing, and more importantly, of hope. It says, I still believe in the possibility of closeness. There's a quiet myth many of us carry into adulthood, the idea that the best friendships are the ones that happen effortlessly, that if you meet the right person, the connection will just click, flow, sustain itself like it did when we were younger. We imagine the spontaneous friend who shows up at your door with takeout after a bad day, the uncanny shared sense of humor, the unspoken understanding that you're each other's person. And when that doesn't materialize, when texts go unanswered, plans fall through, or the bond feels one-sided, we assume something must be wrong. Maybe with them, maybe with us. But this notion of effortless friendship is not only unrealistic, it's deeply unhelpful. Because adult life, by its very nature, is not designed for spontaneity. It's designed for systems, schedules, and scarcity of time, energy, and emotional availability. If we're waiting for friendships to form without intention, we'll wait indefinitely. What's interesting from a psychological perspective is how effortlessness is often equated with authenticity. We believe that the best relationships are the ones that don't require work. But think about that for a moment. We don't apply that logic to anything else we value. A fulfilling career takes effort. A lasting partnership takes effort. Even maintaining our physical health takes deliberate investment. Why should friendship be any different? There's also something deeper at play here, something philosophical. Many of us grew up in cultures that treat needing others as weakness. We valorize independence, self-sufficiency, the idea of being low maintenance. So when we reach out more than once, when we follow up after silence, when we're the one always initiating, we start to fear we're being too much, too eager, too vulnerable. But here's the truth. Consistent effort in friendship isn't neediness, it's commitment, it's show. Wing up in a world where it's far easier to withdraw. Adult friendships thrive not on instant chemistry, but on small, repeated acts of care. The check-in text, the calendar invite, the thinking of you voice note. These aren't signs that a friendship is failing to take off. They are the friendship. The myth tells us that friendship should happen to us. But the reality is that friendship is something we have to choose over and over, often without immediate reward. So when the connection feels a little forced at first, or the conversation doesn't flow perfectly, don't mistake that for failure. That's just the awkward beginning of something real. The truth is, depth doesn't arrive fully formed. It is built incrementally, intentionally, and yes, sometimes awkwardly, through the effort we invest. Because when we stop chasing effortless connection and start embracing intentionality, we don't just make more friends, we make better ones. One of the most overlooked truths about adult friendship is how profoundly it depends on structure, on context and consistency. It's easy to believe that friendship is purely emotional, based on chemistry or shared values, but the reality is far more grounded. Proximity and repetition are often the unsung heroes of intimacy. We underestimate how much simply being around each other shapes our ability to connect. When we look back on our closest friendships from earlier in life, we tend to remember the inside jokes, the long conversations, the deep sense of being known. What we forget is the infrastructure that made those moments possible. We were showing up to the same places at the same time, daily. Whether it was school, sports, rehearsals, dorm life, or shared apartments, those environments provided natural opportunities for unplanned contact, spontaneous conversation, and emotional attunement. We didn't have to schedule friendship. It was built into our lives. Adulthood is the opposite. We work in silos, live in separate neighborhoods, and are divided by different routines, priorities, and often ideologies. There's no shared homeroom to walk into every morning. And yet we still expect the same emotional closeness to emerge. It's not that we've become incapable of connection, it's that the conditions that made connection easy no longer exist. From a psychological standpoint, this matters. Attachment grows through predictability. The brain registers safety and familiarity over time through repeated exposure. You can't develop trust in someone you only see once every few months. And it's not just about frequency, it's about predictability. Do we know when we'll see this person again? Is there a rhythm, a pattern, a sense of ongoingness? The challenge then is to create the conditions for connection deliberately. This often means designing what used to happen by default. Finding or building environments where regular interaction is possible, a weekly book club, a recurring dinner, a shared project, a morning walk. Not every moment has to be profound. In fact, it's the mundane ones that build intimacy, the brief check-ins, the small rituals, the accumulation of ordinary time. These are the threads that weave strong relational fabric. Philosophically, we can think of friendship not just as an emotion, but as a practice. Like meditation or art, it's something that deepens through repetition, through returning, through showing up even when the mood doesn't strike. The beauty of this is that you don't need to be extraordinary to build a meaningful friendship. You just need to be consistent. We often wait for life to slow down before making space for others. but life rarely slows down on its own. If we want deeper connection, we have to architect it. We have to return to each other, intentionally and repeatedly. As we move through adulthood, something subtle and often painful starts to happen. The vision we held of what friendship should look like begins to blur. We find ourselves comparing the reality of our current connections to some idealized image formed long ago. Effortless closeness, constant availability, a best friend who always just gets it. And when our friendships don't match that picture, we don't just feel disappointment, we feel loss. But what if the problem isn't the quality of our friendships? What if the issue is the outdated blueprint we're using to judge them? Adult friendship doesn't look like childhood friendship. It doesn't even look like early adulthood. As our lives become more complex, careers, family, health, geography, so do our relationships. What once was spontaneous becomes scheduled. What was once daily becomes monthly or even seasonal. And yet, many people carry an unconscious belief that true friendship should be immune to these changes, that if it were real, it would look the same no matter how old we are. This belief creates a kind of emotional rigidity. We mourn the friendships that used to be close but now feel distant. We question whether a friend still cares if they don't text back immediately or forget a birthday. But these are not signs of a broken bond. They're signs of life being lived. Relationships evolve because we evolve. To expect friendship to remain unchanged while everything else shifts is to resist the natural flow of human development. Psychologically, this is about flexibility. In therapy, we often talk about the importance of adaptive expectations, holding space for change while still honoring what matters. A close friendship in adulthood might not mean daily contact. It might mean someone who shows up at 2 a.m. when you need them most. It might mean a voice note instead of a phone call, a shared calendar invite instead of an impromptu hangout. These gestures may be less romantic than the friendships we see in movies, but they are no less meaningful. They reflect the reality of our lives and the creativity with which we remain connected within them. There's also something deeply philosophical here. Friendship, like any form of love, is a living thing. It has seasons. Some friendships burn bright and brief. Others are slow-growing and enduring. Some lie dormant and return when you least expect it. To honor friendship in adulthood is to release the idea that closeness always looks the same. It's to understand that depth can take many forms and that presence can mean being remembered, even when we're not immediately reachable. So perhaps the real task is not to chase the friendships we once had, but to recognize and nurture the ones we have now in the forms they take today. When we let go of the fantasy, we make room for reality, messy, beautiful, imperfect, and deeply human,